Hello, my fellow Christian fiction lovers. Welcome to another video, another wrap up. Today, I am going to be sharing with you all of the books that I read in the months of May and June. Okay, so I think I have like 23 books that I want to talk about in this video. So buckle up, grab a tea, grab a coffee, have a good chore to do. We're just going to be chit-chatting about books for a little while. So we'll just kind of we'll go by genre, like we've been doing for the past couple wrap-ups, starting with biblical fiction. The last 2 months, I read two biblical fictions, the first of which was The Healer's Touch by Colin Cosette. This is an Ordinary Women of the Bible series, or book in that series, which basically the Ordinary Women of the Bible is a multi-book series, multi-author series, and they're a little shorter, but they just follow ordinary women of the Bible, and kind of expand on some of their stories. So this specific one followed Tikva, who is a fictional account of the woman with the issue of blood found in the Gospels. And I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I hadn't read a fictional account of the woman with the issue of blood ever before. I know there are a couple out there, but I really liked it. I thought the story was very plausible. It felt like something that could happen. The supporting characters were really sweet, and they changed a lot. She has a mother-in-law in this specific story, and her mother-in-law was very supportive and caring, and I really liked that. I also liked how we got a little glimpse into some of the things that she had been trying, some of the healing techniques and healers that she had gone to before she had her encounter with Jesus. So I liked it. Good biblical fiction, solid New Testament fiction. Really enjoyed it. Okay, and then we had a biblical fiction that I did not like, and that is Love Amid the Ashes by Misu Andrews. Y'all, I did not enjoy this book. I have my thoughts for it in one of my summer reading vlogs that I am doing throughout the summer. I'm doing reading vlogs every single week for what I'm reading. Anyway, have a bunch of thoughts on it in one of those videos. This book was just a real disappointment for me. It follows the story of not Job's wife. I mean, Job's wife is one of the characters in it. So basically, it follows two women. Job's wife, who in this book, her name is Citus. And then we also follow Dinah. Yes, we follow Dinah, who Job, before all the stuff happens in Job's life, all the bad stuff, he picks Dinah to be one of his son's wives, second wives. And Dinah has a really troubled history, a really traumatic backstory. And so we're following her as she is like, why in the world would Job want me? Because she's basically considered an unclean woman at this point. So we're basically following her, questioning, like, why does Job want me? And then she ends up sticking by Job's side the entire time. He loses everything, and then all of his children die, and he's sick, and she's basically right there by his side the entire time, along with his wife and Dinah's handmaid. I can't remember her name, but she was the only redeeming part of this book. Basically, this book just really had a lot of flaws in it. I really disliked how graphically sexual some of it was. Like, there were perspectives, there were way too many POVs in this book, but one of the POVs was Job's enemy. And Job's enemy, I forget his name, but he was also obsessed with Job's wife, Citus. And some of the thoughts that he thinks about her are so graphic and inappropriate, and literally I almost had to stop reading it. I was like, I feel so uncomfy just the fact that this is in a supposedly Christian book. I hated that. And then I really also hated how the story ended. I don't want to spoil it in case this is a book you do want to read, but the ending just really, really frustrated me. And yeah, I didn't enjoy it. Oh, and I think I rated this 2.5 stars, maybe only two. Can't remember. The ratings will be on the screen when I talk about each book. Okay, now moving into historical, I do believe I have all of my thoughts, like more in-depth thoughts on all four of these books in different reading vlogs that I've done in the last 2 months, but I'll still go ahead and do an overview now. The first in this pile is The Reluctant Duchess by Rosanna M. White. This is the second book in the Ladies of the Manor series, and this book follows Bryce, who is a character that we met in book one, and he is a duke now that his father has passed away. He has inherited the title, the estate, all of that. He is a duke now, but he's kind of also like a flirt while also being a really strong Christian. It's a very interesting dynamic with him. And then we also are following Rowena Kinnard, who, poor girl, has also been through the ringer. Recently, she's been sexually assaulted, and her father's trying to force her to marry the man who assaulted her. And basically, she and Bryce have a marriage of convenience in order for Rowena to escape her abuser. Bryce is basically prompted by the Holy Spirit after a whole bunch of drama. Oh my gosh, the like dramatic things that happen in this book that lead up to their marriage of convenience is like a literal whole plot within itself. And I really enjoyed the first 100 pages of this book that led up to their marriage of convenience. So, so good. And then the rest of the book was just a little average for me. I didn't feel like the characters progressed very well. They progressed and they grew as characters, but they just, I don't know, something fell a little flat for me. I also felt like the way that Bryce and Rowena eventually did fall in love was just, it was very slow, and I didn't feel the passion or the spark in the way that typically love interests have in Rosanna M. White books. So overall, I rated this book a 3 star. I did enjoy it and I would recommend it, especially after reading the first book. And we do get to see the couple from the first book a lot in this one, and it's really fun to see how their relationship is doing and their lives are doing. And there is the continuing thread of there are some stolen jewels that Bryce is in possession of at the start of this book, and they have a curse attached to them. And so just exploring those themes is also really cool. So I enjoyed it. I definitely want to read the third book. It's not my favorite by her though. And I have said that before. So but yeah, that was that. That was The Reluctant Duchess. Then I read In This Moment by Gabrielle Meyer. I loved this book. This is the second book in the Timeless series, and we are following Maggie. She goes by a different name in each timeline, but I call her Maggie or Margaret. And Maggie has three timelines because she was born with two birthmarks of the time crossing, like the time crossing birthmark. There we go. And so she has three lives. She has a life in 1861, 1941, and 2001. And so many different things go on. Basically, the premise of this one is she has sworn off of dating and a until she picks what timeline she's going to stay in, and a love interest gets introduced in all three timelines. But it is not purely a romance. It is so deep and rich, and the faith content and the ride, the drama that takes place. And when I say drama, I don't mean in like a soap opera way. I mean in like just the intrigue. I like drama that you get invested in type of thing. And I was so invested. I rated this book a 5 star and I adored it. It was very clear to me by the end which timeline was my favorite and which one I thought she should pick. And she did end up picking the one I wanted her to pick. So, yay. All right. And then I also read The Manhattan Confessions by Jocelyn Green. This is the third book in the On Central Park series. And I read the other two books earlier this year, and I just loved them. I can't remember what exactly I rated this book, either 4.25 or 4.5, something like that. This whole series was very top tier for me. I really enjoyed it. I have a full video on this series as a whole, talking about each book and why you should read them. But this specific book follows Ivy Malone, and she works as a librarian at the New York Historical Society. And basically, the premise of this book is the New York Historical Society released an article that she was writing about a very rich socialite woman, elderly woman now, who came into her money, her wealth, and her prestigious position in very scandalous ways. Now, all of this is anonymous. Nobody knows who the actual woman is. But upon the releasing of this article, two men come to the library and are like, I actually have to know who this woman is, and you have to tell me. And there's just a lot of drama and intrigue because they kind of are indicating that people's lives are on the line, and her life kind of gets thrown into a little bit of danger, and it's a lot of mystery and intrigue, and there's also a love interest in it that we meet in the second book, and it's so so sweet. I loved it. And also, in the midst of all of this, Ivy is trying to help her cousin Gina immigrate to the US, and we're learning all about the struggles of immigration at that time, and I adored it. It was so sweet and so brilliant, and the way that I'm saying sweet. Yes, it was sweet, but not like, oh, cozy, comfy sweet. No, just like the characters were sweet and endearing, and I was really connected to all of them, and I really liked it. So, highly recommend this series, and I am eager to read more things by Jocelyn Green. All right, and then the final historical that I read was With This Pledge by Tamara Alexander. This is a Civil War fiction, and basically we are following Lizzie Clouston, who is a governess at a manor in the South for like a wealthy family, but she is also secretly anti slavery. Literally, like right away, a battle from the Civil War happens in the front yard of the manor, and the house gets turned into like a hospital basically, and she gets involved with or not gets involved with, she basically gets roped into helping with surgeries at the house. And then the other perspective is, what is his name? Captain Roland Jones. And he is one of the soldiers in this battle, and basically they meet because he is injured, and he basically makes her promise that she won't let the surgeon, take his leg. He's determined to keep his leg. And so she like puts herself out there and basically contradicts the doctor when he's like, I have to take his leg. And she's like, you actually can't because I made a promise to him. And he's like, girl, you can't just be making promises like that. I can't do that. And she's like, you have to, or I'm not going to help with the surgery. And so he keeps Roland's leg. And basically, after Roland wakes up, we're just following the aftermath of the battle, and they're healing, and Roland and Lizzie get to know each other more. And it was definitely a deep story, a lot of themes of like, what does it mean to keep a promise? How do you keep a promise faithfully when your heart is feeling different things? Lots of stuff like that. A lot of themes explored. I read this in a reading vlog as well, so I will do my best to try and remember and link all of this stuff down below. I enjoyed it. I gave this book a 4 star, um, and I liked it a lot. All right, now let's move into some time split. So, first, I have two books from the same series. The Wedding Shop by Rachel Hawk. I read the first book in the whole like wedding series a couple months ago, and I really enjoyed it. And so I was like, well, I'll just keep reading the series. So I read The Wedding Shop and I really liked it. I think I gave this book 3.5 or 4 stars. 3.5. It might have been 3.5 only because the ending was like soap opera, and that's just not. I'm not a fan of that. I like my books to be a little deeper. I'm trying to remember exactly what this book is about. I got it out from the library, so I don't have it right in front of me. But basically, what I seem to remember is there is a woman who, this is in present day, there is a woman who her best friend has just passed away, and when they were girls they dreamed about reopening the wedding shop in their town, and so she goes about purchasing it and remodeling it and getting it ready to open. And she experiences a lot of setbacks and the town pushing against her because there's a land developer that basically wants to buy that land and turn it into a parking lot. And she's like, not on my watch, you're not going to do that. And then in the historical timeline, I do remember her name, we're following Cora, and Cora owns the wedding shop. And Poor Cora has been pining after this man who keeps telling her that he loves her, but he's a steamboat captain, and so he travels up and down the river all the time and doesn't he's she only sees him like once a year, and so she's trying to help all these women who come into her shop and are getting married and experiencing this really joyful time in their life. Yet she's like, I want this so badly for myself, and my man keeps promising it to me and keeps failing to deliver. I thought it was really good. The ending was crazy though. And then I tried reading The Wedding Chapel, that's also in this series, and I just could not get into it. We were following a couple of different characters. We were following this woman who had like just gotten married on a whim to like her high school sweetheart or something like that. Like they weren't high school sweethearts. They had re-met a couple years after graduating high school, and they like had this whirlwind romance and got married. But now the spark was gone and they were having struggles like 8 months into their marriage. And then we were also following this girl's this woman's aunt who was like a movie star who had run away from their hometown. And then in the past, we're following the aunt's high school sweetheart who had like built a wedding chapel for them to get married in. I can't remember all of it exactly. And I do think if I hadn't just read The Wedding Shop like right before it, I would have maybe enjoyed it a little better. But it was just too much of like the same themes all connected to each other. And I was like a little over it at that point. And so I did DNF it. And I don't think it's a bad book by any means. I just couldn't get into it. So that was the only DNF I had this go around. I don't DNF a lot. I typically do kind of stick it out. All right, and then contemporary. Yes, let's move into contemporary. So I have one book that I got out from the library, so I'll put up the picture over here somewhere. That's probably what I've been doing for all the library books. But that is The Extraordinary Deaths of Mrs. Kipp by Sarah Brunswald. I adored this book. It was a 5-star read for me. So, so sweet. And I have a full review on it if you want to hear more thoughts. But basically, the premise of this book is we're following Mrs. Kipp, who has been forced into a hospice facility because she's found out that she's dying very soon. And Mrs. Kipp is still full of life, even while dying. And she's like, not she's not following their rules and is like, I'm going to get up and walk around and visit with the other people in here. And they're like, Mrs. Kipp, please sit down. And she's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And she's just bursting with life while also passing away. And then we are also following Aiden, I think is her name. And she is a younger reporter, like she's in her 20s. She's a journalist, and she gets assigned to write an obituary for Mrs. Kipp as a punishment because she made a mistake at her job, because obituaries are not really like journalist level type of things. So she keeps driving out and visiting Mrs. Kipp at this hospice care facility and learning her life story, and she like thinks she's written a good obituary, but her editor is like, nope, you got to get more, because really her editor wants her to write a whole special feature on Mrs. Kipp, because Mrs. Kipp is literally like a rock star powerhouse woman who is amazing, and we all want to be like Mrs. Kipp when we grow up. So I really liked this book. I loved the character development of Aiden. It was so sweet and so relatable for me to read. And I just loved the faith in this book as well. Okay, so I accidentally moved on to contemporary fiction without covering the two physical time split books I have right in front of me. So we're going to go over those really quickly. They're both by Melanie Dobson, but they're very different. So we'll talk about them. Okay, so the first book I read was The Lost Story of Via Bell by Melanie Dobson. This is her most recent release. It released this year, I think in April. And this is a time split. We are following Via Bell, but what's her actual name? Olivia, that's right. We're following Olivia, who is an author in 1940, and she's trying to get past her writer's block after, like, she's had a writer's block since her husband passed away in, well, like 3 years prior. But her editor is like, we need another book from you, and she's like, I'm trying. So we're following her journey, and then she like meets another man and they start having a romance together. And then in the present day, we're following Harper, except it's not the present day, it's 2006. I got to keep remembering that. Harper was a housemaid at this like big Hollywood executive producer guy's house, but she ends up resigning slash getting fired and moves back to where her mom was originally from and starts learning things about Via Bell because her mom was really into Via Bell's books. And Harper's mom has like passed away. So Harper's trying to recover after like a career mistake, while also trying to like be a screenwriter in Hollywood. And then Via Bell is trying to like write a new book and navigate a new love life. And it is so, so good. I gave this book 5 stars. Absolutely amazing. Oh my gosh. I was literally on the edge of my seat like the whole time. It was so good. Okay, and then the second book I read by her was Catching the Wind. And this one is like almost 10 years old. But I really enjoyed it as well. This was a reread for me, except I basically like remembered nothing. Like it was like brand new information to me. So this book is following in the past, we are following Bridget, who has gotten separated from her best friend, and gets involved in some interesting circumstances. And then in the present, we are following Quinby, who is a reporter, and basically she gets hired by this man who is like, I need you to find this girl that I got separated from. The girl is Bridget. And so we're like learning things as Quinby is learning things about the past. We're like also reading about them from Bridget's perspective and then getting a little bit more information. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I gave this book 4 stars. There is like a little touch of romance in it, which I found sweet. Bridget goes through a lot, but she perseveres well. And I liked reading about like her grit and her determination. Like, yeah, it was encouraging. So, definitely really, really liked this book. Okay, y'all, we are back for part 2. I had to take a little break because I was getting a little tired. Had a snack, had a little rest, and we are back to talk about the last couple of books. So, let's go ahead and move into contemporary fiction. I know I already talked about The Extraordinary Deaths of Mrs. Kipp, so talked about that one. Now let's move into the other 3. So, first up, I read All She Ever Wanted by Lynn Austen. This book, it's set in 2004, but I would still consider that contemporary. It was contemporary for the time it was written, at least. And this book follows a lot of different characters, but they're all related. So let's just talk about it. So basically, we open on Kathleen and her daughter Joelle, I believe, and Joelle has just gotten caught shoplifting, and Kathleen is literally freaking out about this. And they end up going on this road trip to try and like, they're going to visit Kathleen's family that she's been estranged from since she left home for college. And on this road trip, Kathleen ends up telling Joelle the story of her childhood and how Kathleen grew up in a poverty stricken household where their father stole a lot of things in order for them to survive. And so that was why she was kind of freaking out about Joelle stealing, because she was like, oh my gosh, this is this like a family trait, you know? Like, and also she doesn't want that type of life for her daughter. So there's that perspective and that story that gets told. And then once they get to the hometown, they end up reconnecting with one of Kathleen's former friends' mothers. And that woman ends up telling them the story of Kathleen's mom and how Kathleen's mom ended up in the position where she married a thief and had a life with him after kind of indicating that she would never stoop that low. And then after that story gets told, Kathleen and Joelle end up reconnecting with Kathleen's uncle, and their uncle tells them the story of the grandmother. So Kathleen's grandmother, Joelle's great grandmother, and how she ended up getting to the point that she got to. And so basically, it's 3 different stories of the grandma, the mom, and the daughter who is now a mom to Joelle. And I liked the first two stories. I liked Kathleen's story and I liked the mom story. I can't remember what her name is. I did not like the grandmother's story. Morally disagreed with so much of it, and I don't understand why she made the choices she made. And I was not a big fan of it. So that definitely, I think I rated this one a 4 star because it was tracking as high for a while, and then um, it just kind of the last, I'd say, 100 pages just really fell off for me. But I did enjoy the story, and I liked the generational aspects of it and the healing that gets experienced at the end. All right, and then I read The Summer of Yes by Courtney Walsh. I just read this book last week and I have thoughts in a vlog. Actually, the next two I just read last week. But The Summer of Yes, we are following two women. We're primarily following Kelsey, who just got in a life threatening car accident, but she makes it out alive. And this basically is a wake up call for her where she realizes that she has been glued to her job too much and needs to say yes to more things. And while she was in the hospital, she meets a very famous businesswoman named Georgina, who has been doing the same thing for her entire career. And so once Kelsey is released from the hospital, she goes back and is like, Georgina, we're going to have the summer of yes. And so basically, these two women start saying yes to everything. And mind you, Kelsey is dragging Georgina along for the majority of this. Georgina is not a willing participant, but it's a funny story. They have a lot of self growth by the end of it. I would say this is a clean read. It is not Christian fiction. There are some mentions of God. There's one time where Kelsey's mom, or Kelsey is like, well, maybe the universe just didn't want me to die. And Kelsey's mom was like, well, I would beg to differ that it was God who wanted you to live. And that's kind of like the majority is just basically this suggestion of like, well, God saved her so that she can do more with her life. But there's no prayer or other faith elements beyond that. But I gave this book 3 stars. I thought it was good, definitely cheesy at some points, but a solid summer read, you know? Okay, and then the final contemporary fiction I read was The Way It Should Be by Christina Suzanne Nelson. This book is deep and emotional, and it definitely made me tear up at the end. So, in this book, we're following two women, the first of which is Zara, and Zara just recently got married and she is trying to put her past behind her. She had a rough childhood and she's trying to put that behind her and just live a new life with her new husband. And in a series of, I'm not going to say unfortunate events, in a series of events, she finds out that she carries the genetic markers for a rare disease called or a rare genetic condition called Hunter syndrome. I really stumbled my way through that. I'm sorry. Um, she finds out she has those genetic markers, and then she also finds out that her twin sister that she has been no contact with for years has lost custody of her children, and the state is asking Zara and her husband to take them in and be their foster parents. And they do end up agreeing to this. And so we're just following how their picture perfect newlywed life is not going exactly the way they anticipated. And then we are also following Tiff, who is a 50-year-old woman who her daughter has gone missing, presumed dead, but has gone missing due to a drug overdose and getting just caught up with a bad crowd. And this has led Tiff to devote much of her time to ministering to the poverty stricken and drug addicted population in her city. And through this, she ends up running into Zara's twin sister, Eve, and really connecting with her and basically taking her on as almost like her, not her child, but just she just takes extra special care of Eve. And so that's how the two stories really connect. Tiff and Zara, they don't connect as much. They have like one scene together in the whole book, but it's more of just how they're both trying to take care of Eve and Eve's kids and do the best in this situation. And this book is full of faith content, it's full of lessons learned by the characters, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was so sweet. I gave this book 4.5 stars and it was touching, very touching and emotional, and I loved it. All right, I have one more library book, and that is Mythmakers by, I can't remember who, but I'll obviously put it on the screen. And this is a graphic novel that I read. And I don't normally read graphic novels, but I heard someone else on BookTube talking about it and it sounded really cool. So I gave it a try. And basically, it is a graphic novel all about J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. And I love both of those authors. I was raised on C.S. Lewis. I've fallen in love with Tolkien this year. And it was a really cool exploration into their childhood and then meeting, their writing, and also looked a lot at like what makes a great story and why are their stories so successful. So it was really cool. I gave it 4 stars and I definitely recommend it. It was really cool to read. All right, I have 2 books left and we're kind of gonna go through them a little quickly. But the first is The Horse and His Boy by C.S. Lewis. This is in the Chronicles of Narnia. Um, Up for debate which number it is, but in my box set, it is book number 3. This book was, I know I read it when I was a kid, but I don't barely remembered it at all. And I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I thought it was a fun read, very fairy tale like, and I enjoyed it. I look forward to reading the next one. I need to get around to reading the next one in this series soon because I think I am a little behind. I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, that is this one. And then my nonfiction that I've been reading for the last basically 2 months now is Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortland. I've been reading like a chapter every 2 or 3 days, basically, and this book was so, so good. I did give it 4 stars just because it wasn't like 5 star material for me, but it definitely did minister to my heart and touch me in really sweet ways. The last good like 5 chapters of this book just really reminded me of how much the Lord loves me and how much God actually cares about me and how I don't have to do anything to earn his love. And I really, really needed that. Like the last chapter of this book, definitely I teared up just reading it. Um, because it was about, the last chapter of this book is called Buried in His Heart Forevermore. And the verse that it kind of talked about was Ephesians 2:7, which says, so that in the coming ages he might show the immeasurable riches of his grace and kindness towards us. And it just talked about like how kind God is towards us and how just how much he loves us. And I don't know how to articulate it really well. The book is does a really good way of articulating just the ways that Christ feels about us and how we truly don't have to prove ourselves to him. I honestly felt like it was like God was just like wrapping me up in a big hug and being like, it's okay, you don't have to work for my love. I'm going to love you regardless. And I think every believer needs that a lot, because we live in a very works-based world. So I really enjoyed it. The reason I gave it 4 stars is my only like complaint with it is basically every chapter he would touch on a certain subject, but he would use a lot of other people's writings to support what he was saying. Like he took a lot of stuff from like Jonathan Edwards' sermons, which I think is fine, but most of the chapters were like 3 or 4 pages, or no, not 3 or 4 pages, like 6 pages. Like 5 to 6 pages total. And I felt like a good half of that content was stuff that other people had written. And I was like, I would have liked, his own words were great. And I was like, I would have liked to have heard a little bit more from him as the author and not just like, here's what I have to say. And these people also say that as well. So that was my like literally only thing with it. But other than that, I loved it and I would definitely recommend it. All right, y'all. That is the, I don't even know how many books that I read in the months of May and June. I hope you enjoyed the wrap up. As always, please let me know if you have read any of these books, your thoughts on them, and don't forget to check out any and all of the vlogs and other reviews and whatnot I have done on them because they will be much more in depth, and a little more fresh than this wrap up. But thank you so, so much for watching this video. If you liked it, don't forget to give it a like. And if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. And I will see you in a video very soon. Bye!